Hello, Bravos. We're back with Near to the Wild Heart by Clarice Lispector. This is chapter 9. This is the third part. There's several parts, as you can see right here, that are separated. This is the third part, or rather small part, in chapter 9. I'm breaking it up into segments because it's a rather long chapter. I think like 30 pages. Joanna ran her hand over the bitch's swollen belly, stroking it with slender fingers. She paused, quickly paying attention. She's pregnant, she said, and there was something in her expression, in those hands fondling the bitch's body, that linked her directly to reality, laying it bare, as if both of them formed one continuous mass. The woman and the bitch were there, alive and naked, with something ferocious in their communion. She speaks in such precise terms that it is terrifying. Otávio thought uneasily, suddenly feeling himself to be useless and effeminate, and this was when he was seeing her for the first time. He observed that there was a brittle, crystalline quality about her that attracted and repelled him at the same time. Even the way she moved, without showing any feeling or liking for her own body, but hurling it dispassionately like an insult for all to see. Otávio watched her move and reflected that not even physically was she the type of woman he fancied. He preferred neat little bodies, perfect in every detail, unsensational, or big bodies like that of his fiancée, set and mute. What he might say to them would suffice. Those lines of Joanna, so fragile, barely outlined, were disquieting. Those lines were so suggestive, her big eyes incandescent. She was not pretty, much too thin. Even her sensuality must be different from his, because it was much too luminous. Otávio tried, from the first moment he met her, not to lose any of her details, saying to himself, "Let no tender feelings crystallize inside me. I must study her carefully." But as she knew she was being watched, Joanna turned to him at that very moment, smiling, cold, not exactly passive, and foolishly he reacted. He spoke, confused and anxious to obey her, instead of obliging her to drop her mask and so destroy herself in his power. And despite that air of someone who is ignorant of the simplest things, as at their very first meeting she had thrown him back within himself, she had thrown him back into his own intimacy, coldly forgetting the little comfortable formulae that sustained him and helped him to communicate with people. Joanna told him. The older man drew near, his enormous body swaying, his head completely bald. He came up to her with pouting lips and bulging eyes, his voice tearful. He said, affecting a childish stammer, "I've hurt myself. It's sore. I rubbed on some ointment. It's getting a little better." He rolled his eyes, and those flabby mounds of blubber began to quiver. The shine of his wet, pouting lips gleamed softly. Joanna leaned over ever so slightly and saw his bare gums. "Won't you say you feel sorry for me?" She looked at him gravely. He betrayed no surprise. "Aren't you going to say, poor little thing?" The sight of this short man with his protruding bottom and plaintive eyes that spoke of timid continence left her amused and bewildered. She said nothing, then slowly in the same tone of voice, "Poor little thing." He laughed, considered the joke over and done with, and turned and made for the door. Joanna's eyes followed him. She leaned slightly forwards to get a better look the moment he withdrew from the table. She confronted him erect and aloof, her eyes wide open and bright. She looked at the table, rummaged for a second, picked up a small, thick book. No sooner had he put his hand on the latch than he received it on the back of his neck with full force. He turned round at once, his hand on his head, wide-eyed with pain and fright. Joanna remained in the same position. Well, she thought, at least he's lost the nauseating expression. It's only right that an old man should suffer. She said in a loud, ingratiating voice, Forgive me. There's a tiny lizard there, right over the door. A brief pause. I missed my aim. The old man continued to stare at her without understanding. Then a vague terror gripped him, confronted by that smiling face. Goodbye. It was nothing. My God. Goodbye. When the door closed, she lingered there with that smile on her face. She gave a little shrug. She went up to the window, her expression weary and vacant. Perhaps I should listen to some music. Yes, you should, you little droog. Goodbye, bruv. That's all for now. Until next time, goodbye.